Hey folks, it's Amanda Manetheren here. So I've had a few thoughts on the responses that we've seen regarding Tolkien and regarding Robert Jordan and the Rings of Power versus the Wheel of Time. So let's think about this. Thoughts have been going around in my head the past few days on the differences of the response by the fans for both of these works and how Amazon seems like they can get away with it, or they think they can, based upon what they did with Robert Jordan, and now they're discovering that maybe they can't. Now, let me know what your thoughts are below, because this is, I think, is an interesting discussion that can be had. And you all can just bring out some great points that I haven't considered, uh, or even correct what I've presented here to you all. Perfectly welcome to do so, because I'm as dumb as they come. But I was thinking about this, and when we think about Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time, we see a fan base that is very vocal, but they're not nearly the same size. But it's not. But it's that size that I kind of want to explore, because Jordan, the size of Jordan's fan base is pretty limited in terms of its literary reach. And Tolkien's is not even close to that. It is far beyond what Jordan's reach was or is. And Tolkien's fan base is large, it's vocal, but it is vigilant in a way that is beyond the scope of any writer today or in history, which is why shows like The Anus of Poder, I don't think is going to get, or they're going to get away with it, which is kind of nice because maybe we're actually seeing a turning of the tide. It would be good, right? So, when we consider the styles of writing, Robert Jordan was more of a modern writer. He wrote just as we speak today. And that's great. That appeals to a big fan base. You know, writing in a classic sense like Tolkien wrote isn't necessarily going to appeal to everybody. And Tolkien's works don't appeal to every fantasy reader today. But they do appeal to a really big portion of folks. That classic sense really helps us get taken back into the world that Tolkien was writing, and it helps that escapism, I think. But the depth of, or the breadth of that impact of a style of writing is kind of what I want to look at a little bit, because it exposes that reader not only to classic literature that was written before the 1900s, but the depth of that writing also exposes the reader to elements of Norse mythology and elements of other mythologies like Greek and Roman cultures and other cultures out there. Because Tolkien was very adamant that he wanted to build a mythology for England, but he had to pull from other elements to build that out for England because he knew how mythology works, right? And so that spreads out what you get exposed to when you read Tolkien. And Robert Jordan pulled from other cultures. I don't want to negate anything that he wrote at all, because clearly the Wheel of Time, that setting was kind of based on a sort of Buddhist view of the world in a lot of cases. But colleges don't study Jordan. Colleges not only study Tolkien, but they have degrees that are based on Tolkien. Classic literature courses look at what Tolkien wrote and have syllabuses based upon, a whole study of what he did and his style of writing. And then you have linguistic classes. There are classes that are solely dedicated to the study of Elvish. And you can even get degrees in Elvish, a language that was never a living language, but was developed by Tolkien specifically for his world of Middle-earth. And that's really interesting. And so you get really a wide fan base that does start off in the fantasy genre, but it expands to something far greater than just the fantasy element. And so when you look at Jordan's appeal was wholly set in the fantasy genre. And I could be wrong about that, and you can say so down in the comments. But it seems to me anyway that once you get outside of the fantasy genre, you don't hear Robert Jordan. When you look at Tolkien, when you get outside of the fantasy genre, you'll hear Tolkien talked about, because you'll hear about him talked about in the classics fan base. But you'll also hear him talked about in the historical fan base as well, because he spoke to mythological elements. And so fans of historical mythology and just historical events will also reference Tolkien's works and be a fan of what Tolkien did. And then you get into the realm of linguistics and language, and the people that study those things, and those people are fans of Tolkien as well. And so there's just this huge swath of fan bases that have been built on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien and the work that Christopher Tolkien did in helping preserve Tolkien's works as well. And I think that that's what Amazon didn't anticipate. They saw an angry fan base with Robert Jordan, but they could easily put that to the side because it wasn't of the breadth and depth that Tolkien's fan base was. And I think that that's the buzzsaw that they've run into. And I think that that's why shows like the Anus of Poder aren't going to succeed. I think that it's really going to prove out that Amazon had a huge and expensive misstep with this in trying to adapt a classic into a modern narrative. And it's going to show. It's going to be fun to watch. Not the show, but watching the dumpster fire occur will be a good thing for society, I think. So anyway, let me know what you think about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your maybe expanse on what I was thinking, or even saying, hey, you misspoke on this portion, and I'd appreciate that too, because nobody is above correction, especially you, Amazon. Not that you're going to watch this. Anyway, I appreciate you guys checking in. We'll catch you on the next video. Chagar Nivran Taishar Manetherin.